Hey, Senator James Langford. I'm sitting in my office with a friend. This is Melissa Oden, and she's got an amazing story. But this is the week that we're talking a lot about life. And there's a reason we're talking about life. On Wednesday, that is tomorrow, the Supreme Court will hear a case called the Dobbs case. Dobbs case you may or may not have heard of, but the Dobbs case really drives to the heart of Roe v. Wade. It answers the question, can a state protect the life of a child before they're quote-unquote viable? The Supreme Court in 1973 said when the child is viable, then the state can engage to protect the life of that child. But the Supreme Court literally invented a new standard of when a state can't be involved in protecting the life of a child, and that's at viability, which is impossible to determine what viability really means. So tomorrow, the Supreme Court's going to revisit that, and we'll have oral arguments to be able to talk about it. Melissa has a very interesting perspective on this that I thought people would want to be able to hear more about her perspective on what is life, when does life begin, and who is a unborn child. You have a unique perspective because I will often tell people the only difference between us as adults and us as children in the womb is time, but you understand that more than most even. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. Yeah, as the Supreme Court wrestles with these questions that you laid out, Senator, I think it's important that we acknowledge that science is clear about when life begins, and it's time for our laws to reflect that. And I am really a living example of what we know to be true about the humanity of the child in the womb. I'll age myself really quickly. I'm now 44. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a leader in the pro-life movement. But what people would never recognize about me is that my right to life was initially, denied to me 44 years ago. People wouldn't know it by looking at me if you passed me on the street, but 44 years ago, I survived a saline infusion abortion. My birth mother really fits most statistics when it comes to abortion. She was 19, she was a college student, she wasn't married to my birth father. And I think really one of the most painful statistics she meets is one that our society doesn't like to talk about, and that's coercion. In a world that talks about abortion as a choice and a right, we know statistically that so many women identified that they weren't given any choice. They were pressured, they were coerced, or they were even forced. And that was my birth mother's experience. Her family forced her to abort me. And so here she was at the age of 19, forced to have an abortion against her will. And this type of procedure isn't performed routinely anymore, not because it was so horrific, which it was, but they stopped performing it because too many of us as children survived that procedure. That abortion that was forced upon my birth mother involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding me in the womb. My medical records identify that I soaked in that toxic salt solution for 5 days. The procedure should have typically lasted 3 days, but they could not successfully induce my birth mother's labor. And so I soaked and I soaked in that toxic salt solution until on the 5th day, they finally successfully induced my birth mother's labor. You have a birthday. I have a day that I now celebrate as my birthday. But in reality, that's the day that I was accidentally born alive in the final step of this abortion procedure. My medical records reflect that the abortionist thought my birth mother was about 18 to 20 weeks pregnant. This is where viability is such an important part of the conversation. So 18 to 20 weeks is what was written on my medical records. But the fact that I weighed almost 3 pounds, I was 2 pounds 14 ounces, showed to the medical professionals my birth mother was much further along. And so in my medical records, you'll find in a little right-hand corner, a neonatologist wrote that I was probably 31 weeks.
Wow. Survived it, grew up. Did you ever get a chance to be able to meet your birth mom?
You know what, I did. It's a painful story, but a beautiful story all in one. I kind of meet what I think most people think a born alive infant is. I'm kind of the poster child for what that looks like. I was initially not provided medical care. I was laid aside. Arguments were made about whether I would be provided any care. And ultimately, a nurse rushed me off to the NICU. That's why I'm here today, because somebody did the right thing. But no child's life should ever be left in the hands of someone doing the right thing.
To literally have a child sitting out there exposed and having conversation, are we going to let this child live or die?
Right. I mean, look at me today. My own children wouldn't exist if my life hadn't been spared and someone did the right thing. Nobody would want that for someone else. So I grew up knowing I was born prematurely. I knew I was adopted. What I didn't know, of course, is that I'd survived this failed abortion. My mom and dad kept it a secret like so many parents do. I ultimately found out as a teenager and went through a really painful process of having to heal from that and forgive my biological parents. But I'm grateful for that because that set me out on a path to find them. I'm now united with my birth mother. We live in the same city. We live in Kansas City, Missouri. I moved there not knowing that that's where she lives. And if you met my birth mother, Ruth, today, she would tell you that, she's so grateful that I survived and that she wants other women to be provided true resources and support. Abortion did not empower her. It didn't empower me. She needed help. She needed people to love her.
So it is remarkable to be able to talk about this. I'm so grateful you came by today to be able to visit. I'm proud that you're here in the middle of this dialogue about the Dobbs case. This conversation about abortion sometimes becomes sterile in many ways to say it's about a woman's right to choose and it's other things, but it's not about a child. You really bring to life, it's about real people and about a person and a child. And in your case, a little girl who was exceptionally helpless, innocent, and was exposed to the elements. And this conversation was made literally hovering over your child, you as a child, over your body to determine if you're going to live or die. All of these dialogues about abortion are a circle around a child. A child who has a future, who has opportunities, who could have children of their own, who could continue to be able to grow and make an incredible investment into our culture and in our society. Every single abortion circles around a child. And so grateful for you as an adult to be able to be here, to be able to talk about a very, very hard beginning for you, but what you continue to be able to do. And you're not alone. There are multiple other survivors of abortion that are out there that continue to be able to tell their story as well. How many have you met, you think, that are survivors of abortion?
Through the Abortion Survivors Network, we've connected with over 400 abortion survivors, so range in age right now from infants to survivors who are nearly 90 years old. And we hear from family members from past generations of survivors who are now deceased. This has been a circumstance that our culture hasn't talked about for a long time. But statistically, Senator, we know that there are likely tens of thousands of people like me, and that's based on CDC data. If people go through the Dreaded Complication series, which was actually published in 1981 in the Philadelphia Inquirer, Dr. Willard Cates of the CDC identified that they were talking through the CDC of 400 to 500 live births a year after failed abortions. That is still happening today. It's not something that just happened in the 70s or the 80s. Children survive abortions still today because I get the great opportunity to meet them and their families. So statistically, when you run those numbers, 400 to 500 a year, we come up with around 20,000 that we know of. 20,000 people just like you and me and people who are listening in who deserve the same opportunity at life that everyone was given.
Yeah, because every single abortion takes the life of a child, of a future adult, of a human being. So thanks for being a part of this conversation as we talk about the value of every single child and every single adult that was once a child and what that really means to all of us. Abortion is not just about some sterile medical procedure. It is about a child in the womb. If you go back to even Mother Teresa's statement that 3/4 of the victims in abortion are women. This is not about empowering women. This is about literally attacking women. And so thanks for staying engaged. Thanks for staying involved in an ongoing dialogue on this as we take a very firm stand to be able to protect the life of children. Thanks.